of course, we are looking at security options to make sure that the chain is always secure. And decentralization is a big topic there. Yeah, so MEV I think is a hot topic, and for us it starts to become relevant now. And I think in the end, as an ecosystem, you want users to come in without any worries about being front run or without being like sandwiched. To have that smooth user experience and not feel like, oh shit, I got ripped off here.
Welcome to the Bare Metal Podcast.
Hi everyone, welcome to the Bare Metal Podcast. This is Martin from Rockaway X. As usual, I'd like to invite everybody to Gateway 2023, happening in less than 2 weeks from June 3rd to June 5th in beautiful Prague. Come join us, have a look at the new tech that everyone's working on in Cosmos. And today I have got here with me Jeroen from Persistence. Welcome.
Hey Martin, thanks a lot for having me, and super excited about Gateway as well. Looking forward to that one.
So let's get right into the game. Can you tell us more about the Persistence ecosystem?
Yeah, sure. So Persistence is actually a Cosmos-based layer 1 or app chain, which focuses on liquid staking and all like DeFi that comes around liquid stake tokens. So that's in very short the pitch. Basically, what we've built so far with Persistence is so the chain level itself, which is called the Persistence Core 1 chain. Then on top of that, you have pStake. pStake is a liquid staking protocol, which is built in a modular fashion on top of the chain. And pStake does the issuance of liquid stake assets. So they do that not only for assets within the Cosmos ecosystem, but they actually went outside of the Cosmos ecosystem and do liquid staked BNB and liquid staked ETH as well. But the focus at this stage is mostly on liquid staked Atom, which is one of the first assets they enabled in the Cosmos ecosystem. And of course, they will expand into further assets that are available over IBC. Now, pStake is the first app which basically does the asset issuance of liquid staked assets. Now, of course, when it comes to liquid staked assets in DeFi, you want to use these assets. Otherwise, there's no point in having them liquid staked. So that's where the rest of the ecosystem needs to come in. One of the next building blocks that was kind of put in place for that is Dexter. Dexter is an exchange, decentralized exchange, focused on the trading of liquid staked assets. So they have a special focus on making sure that those trades are happening as efficiently as possible. Then outside of Dexter's, there are a few other things that are currently like being built. What I call like the other DeFi primitives that you need. One is a money market, which is called Bamboo. That's in the works. We'll probably launch somewhere Q3, Q4, depending a bit on market conditions. Where again the focus will be on using liquid staked assets as collateral, for example. Mm-hmm. And then you have the other primitives, which could be a vault product or some type of a leverage liquid staking, things like yield aggregators, things like that. So those are the next products that are in the pipeline. Some are more concrete than others, but we have Cosmos enabled, so we have the option to attract builders to come in and build all these use cases around liquid staking. So that's kind of Persistence ecosystem in a nutshell.
Got it. Thanks. I've got two questions that caught my as you were talking, caught my attention. One is, you guys started with ETH first, is that right? And now you're moving to Atom. Why did you decide, to move into Cosmos now? What was the trigger for, hey, we need to get Atom on board?
So we actually started with Atom, but we started with the issue. So we started with Atom and XPRT, so two assets to liquid stake. But what we did is actually we issued them on Ethereum. So that was quite a complicated setup, but the reason for that was that there was actually no DeFi in the Cosmos ecosystem at the moment that we launched liquid staking with pStake. So we were one of the early people there in liquid staking. But we had these liquid staked assets that we had, or we had to do something with them, and there was nothing to do in the Cosmos ecosystem. So we had to kind of bring them into Ethereum because their DeFi was actually quite active and blooming at that stage. And we managed to attract quite a bit of TVL there. I think at some point we reached 55 or 60 mil or so in TVL through those products. But then kind of realized that for like users, it's not the best user experience. It involved bridges as well, which are prone to hacks, and we kind of wanted to get rid of that risk. I mean, we luckily never got exploited, but of course, wanted to get rid of that risk and kind of bring Atom or liquid state Atom home to the Cosmos ecosystem, which is why we issued it now on the persistence chain.
So, but that means you do have to bridge to BNB and ETH, obviously, now if you want to issue those on the Cosmos chain. So, what do you guys use to bridge?
So for the BNB ecosystem, that entire solution is actually built within the Binance Smart Chain. For the ETH solution, that entire solution is actually built and deployed on Ethereum.
And so you're avoiding bridges. Nice.
So it's currently not using any bridges, and there's an update to the Ethereum solution, so the SDK ETH solution coming out, which will bring out on Optimism. Would be the first liquid state ETH on a layer 2. And that would not use a bridge. So yeah, it's quite exciting to have this multi-chain approach for P-Stake at least. But it makes, of course, things a bit complex to explain, I guess, to people.
I can imagine. So the second thing that caught my attention when you're talking about the breadth of the ecosystems, you guys seem to be building a lot of things, by yourselves. Are you also partnering with some chains in, the Cosmos ecosystem to like use your liquid staked assets and include them in their DeFi? Obviously, I guess you'll run a pool on Osmosis, I'm guessing, but are there any further sort of partnerships you guys are thinking about?
100%. Yeah, of course. I mean, I think that's one thing we realized is we can't build everything ourselves. We don't want to either. And that's why we have a very focused vision now on the products that are there. So that's P-Stake, that's Dexter, and then Persistence as a chain. A lot of the other products will actually come through other teams that are building with us in forms of partnerships, often supported by Persistence Labs. And then, of course, we have partnerships with other protocols where the liquid stake tokens can be put to good use. So, for example, you could use SDK Atom on UMI to use as collateral. I do think we have a partnership with Shade. We have partnerships all across Cosmos, basically, to make sure there is enough utility for those liquid stake assets outside of our own ecosystem, because we know we can't just build our own ecosystem. We want to be part of the wider Cosmos ecosystem and play our role, of course, and provide some of the DeFi primitives, as I call them, ourselves, but also make sure that the users of DeFi primitives in other ecosystems can have those access to those assets as well, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. Let's look a little bit more into the liquid staking, approach you guys have taken, since that's still the main app, I guess, on Persistence. Can you give us a high-level view of how you guys leverage IBC? How does issuance work if you're liquid staking? So let's say Atom.
Yeah, sure. So I mean, I think first of all, I'm not sure if everyone's familiar with liquid staking, but in very short, what it does, it's actually a way to stake your tokens without having to lock them for the locking period of typically 21 days in the case of Atom. Means that you can still use those tokens in DeFi and actually earn staking yield and DeFi yield at the same time. So that's kind of the problem that liquid staking solves. So in a way, it's just improving capital efficiency, because once you lock up your tokens to stake, you can't do anything with it. Now, a liquid staking protocol typically issues you liquid stake tokens, what in the case of P-Stake we always call STK tokens, so example STK Atom. And those assets can be used in DeFi while your atoms itself are still locked up and staked and securely staked on the chain. Now, how we use IBC, I think that's slightly different question. But so again, to give some context, maybe IBC is the inter-blockchain communication protocol, which is basically a way for blockchains to communicate with each other. Actually, it's kind of similar to a bridge, but in a slightly different way, because it's more native to the protocol. Now, one of the features of IBC is called ICA. ICA is interchain accounts, and when we do the issuance of the assets and the actual liquid staking, ICA is one of the first things that we use. So in order for a user of the Cosmos Hub to stake Atom on the Persistence chain, we actually use interchain accounts. And interchain accounts, it's actually a way of how do I say this? It's actually
to to control a target account from a
Correct.
source chain. Right?
Correct.
It's an app on top of IBC.
Perfect. Thanks for helping me out there. But yeah, that's exactly it. So, and for a user to be able to stake Atom through a protocol that is listed on the persistence chain, we need interchain accounts. So that's the first way to kind of issue that, so that users can bridge assets from or kind of IBC assets from Cosmos to persistence. Persistence can actually, or from the persistence chain, bstake can stake those assets on the target chain, which would be the Cosmos hub, and then issue the SDK assets on the persistence side. So that's the first way of using IBC or ICA to do the liquid staking. Then you have the overall IBC protocol that comes in, which brings a lot of other features, and I think mainly in terms of interoperability between protocols. Because let's say now you have those SDK assets on the persistence chain. As we discussed earlier, you still want to use those in protocols outside of the persistence chain. And that's again where IBC comes in, and where you can basically IBC these assets around various chains. With that also, you kind of increase the potential for liquidity across the various chains, and it's quite flexible when it comes to interoperability and building good UX. So IBC and ICA is a huge factor in that.
There's also talk around the liquid staking module developed by IQillusion and its use in persistence. What exactly does that for you guys?
Yeah, so the LSM or liquid staking module, as you call it, right? Developed by IQillusion. It's basically a way to safely and efficiently facilitate the adoption of liquid staking. I think that's kind of the way to put it. Originally, that's designed for Atom, but in a way, it can actually also be used on other chains, including the persistence chain. We actually have this live on our testnet at the moment. We're one of the first chain. I think we're actually the first chain to test this out on testnet. Sorry. But so the key features of the LSM, I think the main one that everyone will know and will use is the ability to instantly liquid stake tokens which are already staked. So let's say I'm currently staking Atom, but I'm just normal staking. So I get my staking rewards. However, now I want to liquid stake. Currently, without the LSM, I would have to unbond my Atom, wait for 21 days, give up my staking rewards, and then I can liquid stake, which is not ideal because I give up 21 days of staking rewards. Now, what the LSM does, it actually creates the ability to transfer tokens that are already staked immediately into the liquid staking protocol, or even to other wallets. Like another use case would be that you have liquids, or you have staked assets in a hot wallet and you want to now migrate them to a cold wallet. Currently, the only way to do that is to unbond them. With the LSM, you would be able to actually send them without unbonding. So that's one of the main features. And then it has two additional features, I think, that are worth mentioning. There's actually a few more, I think, but I mean, for the sake of time, limiting to those. One is the limiting of the risks of liquid staking in general. So there's actually some concept that's introduced. I think it's called the global liquid staking cap, which is a parameter that can be decided up on governance. And it basically says what the maximum amount is of liquid stake there can be on a particular chain. So for example, you could limit all liquid stake atoms to be maximum 25% of the total supply of Atom. In that way, you would always kind of remove any type of big risk when it comes to liquid staking or control of a liquid staking provider onto a specific token. And of course, governance can decide. I think for Atom, the plan is to start and go live with 25%, which is a number that is quite a bit under the 33% threshold. So yeah, I think that's another feature. And then the last feature that the LSM introduces is something called the validator bond. The validator bond is something that ensures that the validators who receive those delegations through the liquid staking providers have some sort of a skin in the game. Because that's a bit of a risk of liquid staking, like liquid staking providers delegate to various delegators, but they don't have really a huge skin in the game or risk, like when they get slashed, there's very little risk for them. And so this validator bond actually introduces a way for validators to put some skin in the game to ensure that there's an incentive alignment between the validator and the actual holder of the atom.
Right. Yeah, that's quite a detailed description. I don't think I've heard such eloquent description of the LSM properties before.
Well, we are actually doing a workshop on the LSM in Gateway, so inviting everyone to come and visit.
Oh, excellent. Okay. I use the LSM as a way to potentially even move staked atom, right? So you can sell, as you say, you can transfer it from hot to cold, but I can also sell it to somebody else, which
Correct.
I couldn't do before with staked assets because those are blocked, right? Those are locked into the account.
Correct.
So, talked a lot about how you guys are operating on Cosmos. Are you guys thinking about how to manage the allocation of the liquid stake tokens on the Cosmos chain? Did you guys do that through governance on P-Stake? Is governance on Cosmos involved, or do you guys, let's say, professionally allocate these according to some criteria? How does that work?
Yeah, so currently the way it works is that the P-Stake protocol, or like the team behind P-Stake, kind of proposed a starting set of, I think it's 62 validators based on specific criteria. So I think the criteria are very specific, like on-chain parameters that can be verified by anyone. Comes to, I think, uptime, minimum stake, things like that, governance participation, maybe. I don't know exactly what's included. But based on that, an initial set of 62 validators was proposed. And then that was approved through governance on the P-Stake side. So P-Stake is actually a governance token which can be used to vote on things like this, the validator set for Atom. This was not, no, I don't think there's any governance on the Atom side at this stage required for that.
So there's an approved list, and those validators get an equal proportion of the tokens, or is there some sort of distribution strategy here?
So I think that it's all equal at this stage. I do think that there is, like in upcoming versions, like improvements to this. Ideally, you want to have that set as wide as possible and well distributed as possible. I think there's various mechanisms, and then like there's various I think every liquid staking provider has like a different implementation and different set and different criteria. And yeah, I think over time, I think these will get kind of adjusted and improved upon.
So leading up to that, you guys manage XPRT tokens, persistence plus these other tokens of other chains. Now that's Cosmos, could be other chains later. Do you feel that imposes or places more pressure on you guys being well decentralized and credibly demonstrating to everybody that the chain is safe, assets are safe? Do you feel like that's the case, or is it just like any other L1?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I don't particularly feel the pressure because of that, but just in general, it's something like decentralization is something that we want to achieve. And I mean, I know it's not a like black or white. I think it's a spectrum, right? But when it comes to products, I think that's one thing we definitely look at to make sure that there is no or only like very, very few centralized components in the product. Nothing custodial. So in a way, if you look at the SDK Atom product, there's actually nothing custodial in a way there. So the security of that is kind of using the security of the persistence chain in a way. And there again, of course, of course, we are looking at security options to make sure that the chain is always secure. And decentralization is a big topic there. It's something we look at. We have, of course, use things like Observatory to see how we are doing. I think if you look at it in the current stage, we are well decentralized. But if you look at what it is actually that we're trying to do with decentralization, it's security is one way, I think, and then resistance is another. So security means that you want to be resistant in a period of attack. Right, when someone tries to attack the chain, you want to be decentralized enough to be able to withstand that attack. And then secondly is having that resistance during a period of distress or an event. Let's say a bunch of data centers in a specific region go offline. You don't want these things to impact the chain and then halt the chain. So of course we're looking at that. We try to have stake quite well decentralized and distributed. But of course, since a lot of the stake is actually with users, it's more about educating people. It's telling about it's telling people about the importance of decentralization in a way to mitigate any forms of attack, if that helps.
Yeah, that makes sense. You've touched on security of the chain. There is persistence right now is a sovereign blockchain, right? You have your own set of validators, but there's a lot of choice opening up in the Cosmos ecosystem. And I've read on the on your blog that you're thinking about various ideas of where to shift your security posture. And prior to the call, we talked about two options: one's replicated security, and the other one's mesh security. So, can you give us your thinking around how you weigh these options, and what is your thinking around making this leap? Because it's definitely it's a lot of engineering work, and it is a risk, right? So there has to be some. I'm interested in what the reward is that you guys are seeing as a result of making potentially such moves.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, of course. So at the moment, like if you look at security of the chain, of the persistent chain specifically, it is dependent on the XPRT token, right? So that's the governance token of the persistence chain. We have quite a bit of, I think it's 80% is staked. So in that way, that's quite secure when it comes to like total economic security that is there. However, I think in terms of security, you can never be happy with the security you have. I think you always have to try and get more if that's available, right? And interchain security or replicate, like in the form of replicated security or mesh security, are actually bringing new ways of creating a secure chain beyond what your own token can do, right? Because there's only so much like market cap that your token can have in order to kind of secure the chain, and especially with a protocol like pStake on top of it, where it is quite likely that the assets or the liquid staked assets at some point might exceed the market cap of persistence itself. That actually creates some form of risk. So that's why we're looking at bringing in additional security on top of that. Like one is replicated security, the other one is mesh security. There's actually a third one that we're also looking at is Bitcoin security through Babylon. So we have that on our testnet as well. But so how we look at it is like we basically check all the options. We see what is the impact on not only on a technical aspect, but also like from a community perspective, from a token perspective. Need to look at all these things and see what the community wants. What does the community think is a good way forward? Because in a way, if you think about like replicated security, it's a very good way to align the mind and then like align the interests of the persistence chain to the entire Atom ecosystem or the Cosmos ecosystem, right? So if we would be able to become a replicated security chain or a partner chain, and in return give up some of the revenue that is generated on the chain to Atom stakers, I think that's a win-win in a way, because we can 100x, I think, our security, and we can give up some of the revenue generated, and Atom stakers win by this as well. So I do think that, I mean, there's a lot to be thought about, and in terms of like exact implementation, that's still in the works and like in the research phase from our end. But overall, I do see big benefits in kind of both of these security modules, actually.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. There's a lot of work happening in Cosmos now around MEV as well. I mean, there are at least two players looking to build MEV solutions. There's Skip and there's Mechatech, right? So I heard you guys are exploring sort of the MEV world together with Skip on persistence. Can you comment more on like what you guys are testing? How do you guys think about MEV and who should govern the MEV? Let's say the rewards or the MEV markets, which are going to be allowed on chain. How are you guys thinking about that?
Got it. Yeah, so MEV I think is a hot topic, and for us it starts to become relevant now, right? Like it wasn't really relevant before because there was not that much activity on the chain outside of like issuance of liquid staked assets, which doesn't really create MEV opportunities. Now with the DEX that is launched and then gaining traction, like TVL is actually going up quite nicely. This starts to create more and more MEV opportunities. Now there's a few options, right? Like either you just let people come in and like search for the MEV and try to extract as much as possible. That's option one. I think option two is you have like a select set of validators that runs these MEV searchers and bots to try and extract the MEV whenever it's there, and they are able to propose a block. And then the third option, which I think is like the coolest option to look at, is the in-protocol MEV capture, which is something we are indeed exploring with Skip at this stage. So I had a call with them, looking at like what are the requirements for the chain in order to import that. The reason I think the on-chain or like the in-protocol MEV capture is the best option forward is because it doesn't bring that value just to a very select group of stakeholders, like maybe the MEV searchers or the specific validators. But this way, you could actually capture that MEV and redistribute it amongst like the stakers of the protocol, which I do think like could be a big value add, and especially if you look at secure, like one of the ways security works at this moment is you have validators that secure the chain, but you have to incentivize these validators through commission and through staking rewards, which very often comes from inflation, right? At this stage, or very early projects typically use inflation to pay for that. Now, over time, that's not a super sustainable model, right? And you have to kind of get to like real yield of sorts, or like a real form of compensation. And with MEV, you can actually start doing that, because you can actually start attracting or kind of generating revenue of sorts, and distribute that to your validators, so they don't have to rely on inflationary rewards. So over time, I think it's a more healthy option for a long-term like approach and economic value of the chain. So that's how we look at it. In terms of implementation, Skip is focusing on bringing that together with for everything that is Cosmos V47. So on our side, we're actually finalizing the code now to upgrade our chain from 45 to 47. And once that is live on our testnet, which is expected to be in the next couple of weeks, Skip will start doing their work to see how much it would actually take to get that implemented. But that's typically, I think, if I remember correctly, a 2-3 weeks type of thing. And then we could launch with MEV on the chain. So hopefully that will be somewhere early Q3, I think.
So you talked about rewards distribution. How do you guys think about MEV markets? So there are different like ways you can move the MEV module, and I do recall Skip does have one switcher now, at least that's front running. You can switch off the front running capability. There's also sandwiching. There, later I guess liquidations or liquidity providing. Are you guys thinking about what kind of MEV markets you'd like to open, or is it going to be a free for all?
Yeah, no, I think definitely, in the end, I think want to decide these things through governance, like with the community. But personally, like from my perspective, I do think like I only want to extract like good MEV, want to avoid any attacks that harm the user from a perspective. And I think in the end, as an ecosystem, you want users to come in without any worries about being front run or without being like sandwiched. To have that smooth user experience and not feel like, oh shit, I got ripped off here. And I think, of course, we'll be using those switches to kind of see what type of MEV we capture. But yeah, in a way, like MEV, there is a lot of good MEV as well, especially if you have a DEX with various trading pools. I think it's almost arbitrage of sorts that can happen automatically. So yeah, definitely looking at that. But overall, like want to have all of this go through XPRT governance, actually.
That makes a lot of sense. Okay, I guess that's a good place to end the pod. So thanks very much for coming on and explaining all things persistence. And good luck with your roadmap.
Thank you so much for having me, and it was an absolute pleasure. And yeah, see you soon.